My wife called to invite me to her wedding, to the man she'd been cheating with for 2 years, but she had no idea I'd been planning her wedding day destruction for months. Welcome to Revenge Galore. If you crave real gripping stories where justice hits hard and betrayal never goes unpunished, this channel is your new favorite place. Please subscribe. My name is Jeff Anderson, and at 55 I thought I understood what marriage meant. 15 years with someone I trusted completely, someone I'd built a life with, someone who promised to stand by me through everything. I'm a detective with the Seattle Police Department, trained to see deception, but somehow I'd missed the biggest lie being told right in my own home. The discovery came on a Tuesday evening in March, the kind of gray Seattle day that makes you grateful for warm houses and loyal spouses. At least that's what I thought I had. I'd come home early from a particularly brutal case, a domestic violence situation that had gone sideways, and found my wife Melissa's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. The message preview was from someone named Dr. Richard. The text read, "Can't wait for tomorrow night. Tell Jeff you're working late again. Dr. Richard Thornfield." I knew that name. Melissa's marriage counselor, the one she'd been seeing 4 individual sessions, to work through her anxiety about our relationship. The man she'd been meeting twice a week for the past 6 months. I stood in my kitchen holding my wife's phone, feeling my detective instincts kick in even as my heart shattered. The timestamps on their messages went back over 2 years. 2 years of Dr. Thornfield this, and therapy appointment that, while they were planning their future together. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the conversation thread about me. "Jeff is so predictable," Melissa had written. "Works late, comes home tired, falls asleep watching TV. He has no idea what's happening right under his nose." "Poor detective," Richard had replied. "Can't even detect what's in his own bedroom. Soon you won't have to pretend anymore." I sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours, methodically scrolling through months of messages. They'd been planning this divorce, planning their life together, planning to take everything I'd worked for. Melissa had even sent Richard photos of our financial documents, our investment statements, our insurance policies. They thought I was just a tired cop who'd let his marriage slide. They had no idea they were dealing with someone who'd spent 20 years learning how to build bulletproof cases against people who thought they were smarter than the system. When Melissa came home that night, I was sitting in my usual spot on the couch, beer in hand, watching ESPN like always. She kissed my forehead and told me about her book club meeting, with enthusiasm that now made perfect sense. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, the lie rolling off her tongue like she'd been practicing. "Same old thing," I said. "Chasing bad guys who think they're clever." I didn't confront her that night, or the next night, or the night after that. Instead, I did what I do best. I started building a case. The divorce papers came 6 weeks later, delivered by a courier while I was at work. Melissa had moved out the previous weekend while I was on a stakeout, taking half the furniture and all of her personal belongings. She'd left a note on our bed, "Jeff, I need more than you can give me. Richard and I are starting fresh. I hope you can understand." The financial demands were extensive. Half the house, half my pension, spousal support for 5 years, and division of our investment portfolio. Her attorney was aggressive, painting me as an absent husband whose career had destroyed their marriage. But here's what Melissa didn't know. I'd been preparing for exactly this scenario for 6 weeks. Every conversation they'd had, every plan they'd made, every secret they thought they were keeping, I had it all documented, legally obtained, and ready for court. The real investigation began after she moved out. I used my professional network to dig into Dr. Richard Thornfield's background, and what I found was far more interesting than a simple affair. Dr. Richard Thornfield wasn't exactly who he claimed to be. First red flag. His psychology license had been suspended in California for inappropriate relationships with clients, before he'd moved to Washington and somehow obtained new credentials. He'd been treating vulnerable women and systematically seducing them during their most fragile moments. Second red flag. His impressive downtown therapy practice was funded through insurance fraud. He was billing for sessions that never happened, claiming specialized treatments that he wasn't qualified to provide, and running what amounted to a high-end escort service disguised as therapy. Third red flag. The expensive lifestyle that had attracted Melissa was built on money laundered through fake therapy sessions with clients, who were actually his criminal associates paying for services that had nothing to do with mental health. But the most interesting discovery was the pattern of relationships. Melissa wasn't his first affair with a married client. She was number 7 in a long line of wealthy women he'd seduced during therapy, convinced to leave their husbands, and then systematically drained of assets before he moved on to his next victim. I spent 3 months building a comprehensive case, working nights and weekends, using every contact I'd made in 20 years of police work. Financial Crimes Unit helped me trace the money laundering. The Psychology Licensing Board provided records of his previous violations. Former victims gave statements about his pattern of manipulation and fraud. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed perfect timing for maximum impact. That's when Melissa called with her wedding invitation. "Jeff, I know this might seem strange," she said, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. "But Richard and I are getting married next month and we'd like you to come." I almost laughed. "You want me to attend your wedding? We're starting fresh and we want to clear the air. Richard thinks it would be therapeutic for all of us to have closure. Besides, we're inviting everyone who's important to us, and you were a big part of my life." The wedding was planned for the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, Seattle's most prestigious venue. 300 guests, including Richard's professional colleagues, Melissa's extended family, and prominent members of Seattle's medical and legal communities. The perfect audience for what I had planned. "Sure, Melissa," I said calmly. "I'd love to be there." Over the next 4 weeks, I refined my strategy with the help of some very motivated allies. Detective Sarah Martinez from Financial Crimes, who'd been tracking Richard's money laundering operation. Assistant District Attorney Michael, who was building a RICO case against the criminal network using Richard's practice for money laundering. And Dr. Patricia Wells, the psychiatrist who'd been collecting evidence of Richard's pattern of patient abuse. We had more than enough evidence to arrest Richard immediately, but waiting for the wedding would accomplish something far more satisfying: complete public exposure in front of everyone who mattered in his professional and social world. The coordination required was extensive. Sarah's team would monitor the reception for the optimal moment to present evidence. Michael's office prepared arrest warrants for both federal financial crimes and state professional misconduct charges. Dr. Wells compiled testimonies from 7 previous victims who were ready to go public with their experiences. Meanwhile, I maintained my cover as the broken ex-husband. I attended my department's mandatory counseling sessions, talked about working through the divorce, and let everyone think I was struggling with depression and career stress. Melissa, meanwhile, was having the time of her life planning her dream wedding. Her social media was a constant stream of dress fittings, venue tours, and gushing posts about her soulmate Richard. She posted photos of her engagement ring with captions like, "Sometimes the universe gives you everything you didn't know you needed." The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. She was celebrating her future with a man who was already planning her financial destruction, and she had no idea. 3 days before the wedding, I received my final piece of evidence. A recorded conversation between Richard and his associate discussing how they planned to access Melissa's divorce settlement money for their money laundering operation. She wasn't his bride, she was his next mark. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel was magnificent on the day of the wedding. June 15th, perfect Seattle weather, 300 guests in formal attire celebrating what everyone believed was a fairy tale romance. I arrived in my best suit, carrying a small gift bag, and took my assigned seat in the back of the ballroom. Melissa looked beautiful in her designer gown, radiant with happiness. Richard looked every inch the successful professional in his custom tuxedo. They'd spared no expense for their perfect day. The ceremony went smoothly. Traditional vows, beautiful music, emotional readings about love and commitment. I watched it all with the calm patience of someone who knew that the real show was about to begin. The reception started with cocktails and networking. I watched Richard work the room, charming judges, impressing medical colleagues, building the professional relationships that would make his downfall even more devastating. Melissa glowed beside him, introducing her new husband to family members who'd flown in from across the country. At 7:30, the master of ceremonies called everyone to their tables for dinner and toasts. The head table was positioned perfectly, center stage, visible to every guest, with Richard and Melissa facing the crowd like royalty holding court. That's when Sarah Martinez entered the ballroom. She walked calmly to the front of the room, detective badge visible, and approached the head table. The conversations gradually died as guests noticed the police presence. "Dr. Richard Thornfield," Sarah announced clearly, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, insurance fraud, and professional misconduct." The shock on Richard's face was immediate and devastating. Melissa's expression shifted from confusion to horror as the implications hit her. "There must be some mistake," Richard stammered, rising from his chair. "This is my wedding day." "No mistake," Sarah replied, producing handcuffs. "We have 18 months of evidence documenting your criminal enterprise. You have the right to remain silent." As Sarah began reading Richard his rights, Assistant District Attorney Michael stepped forward with a tablet and portable speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael announced to the stunned crowd, "I apologize for interrupting this celebration, but you're witnessing the culmination of a federal investigation into Dr. Thornfield's criminal activities." The tablet screen displayed financial records showing the money laundering operation. Bank statements, client billing records, and cash transfer documents that painted a clear picture of systematic fraud. Dr. Thornfield has been using his therapy practice to launder money for criminal associates while simultaneously defrauding insurance companies and seducing vulnerable female clients. Melissa stood frozen at the head table, her wedding dress now feeling like a costume in a nightmare. "Richard, what is he talking about?" But Richard was no longer focused on her. He was staring at me, sitting calmly in the back of the ballroom, and for the first time understanding exactly who he'd been dealing with. "Detective Anderson," he said, his voice barely audible. "You set this up." I stood slowly and walked toward the head table, my footsteps echoing in the silent ballroom. 300 wedding guests watched as the narrative they'd believed for months collapsed in real time. "Dr. Thornfield," I said calmly, "you made two critical mistakes. First, you thought stealing my wife would break me. Second, you assumed a Seattle police detective wouldn't notice that his wife was being manipulated by a serial predator." I turned to address the crowd, many of whom I recognized as prominent members of Seattle's professional community. "For the past 8 months, Dr. Thornfield has been conducting an affair with my ex-wife while she was his therapy client. This violated every ethical standard of his profession and constituted criminal patient abuse." Dr. Wells stepped forward with her evidence folder. "Dr. Thornfield has engaged in inappropriate relationships with at least 7 female clients over the past 5 years. Melissa Anderson is simply his latest victim." The crowd's murmur grew louder as the scope of Richard's deception became clear. These weren't just criminal charges. They were revelations about a man who'd systematically abused his position to prey on vulnerable women. "But there's more," I continued, enjoying the complete attention of everyone who'd come to celebrate Richard's triumph. "Dr. Thornfield's therapy practice has been a front for money laundering operations. He's been billing insurance companies for fake sessions while helping criminals hide proceeds from drug trafficking, fraud, and theft." Michael activated a second display showing the criminal network connections. Names, dates, financial transfers, and recorded conversations that demonstrated the scope of Richard's criminal enterprise. "The man you came here to celebrate is facing federal charges that carry a potential sentence of 25 years in prison." Melissa finally found her voice. "Jeff, this is insane. Richard is a respected therapist. You're making this up because you're jealous." I looked at my ex-wife with something approaching pity. "Melissa, you weren't Richard's bride. You were his next mark. He's done this before: seduce married clients, convince them to divorce their husbands, take control of their divorce settlements, then move on to the next victim." Sarah produced a thick evidence folder. "Mrs. Thornfield, we have recorded conversations where your new husband discusses plans to access your divorce settlement for his money laundering operation. You weren't marrying a successful doctor. You were about to become another victim of his financial crimes." The silence in the ballroom was deafening. 300 guests sat frozen as they processed the complete destruction of everything they believed about Richard Thornfield and his fairy tale romance. The arrests that followed were swift and thorough. Richard in handcuffs, led away by federal agents while wedding guests recorded everything on their phones. Melissa collapsing into a chair as the reality of her situation became clear. Family members demanding explanations while friends distanced themselves from the scandal. The media response was immediate and overwhelming. Local news crews arrived within 30 minutes, drawn by social media posts from wedding guests. The story had everything: police corruption investigation, medical professional misconduct, marriage fraud, and money laundering at a high society wedding. By morning, the story was trending on every major platform. Seattle therapist arrested at wedding for money laundering and patient abuse. Detective exposes ex-wife's criminal husband at wedding reception. Fairy tale wedding becomes federal crime scene. The professional consequences for Richard were immediate and devastating. His psychology license was permanently revoked. His therapy practice was seized by federal authorities. His medical colleagues issued statements distancing themselves from his activities. But the personal consequences for Melissa were equally severe. Her family, who'd traveled from across the country for her dream wedding, learned that she'd been manipulated by a serial predator who'd planned to financially destroy her. Her friends discovered that her perfect relationship, was actually a criminal conspiracy targeting her divorce settlement. The social media humiliation was relentless. Wedding guests posted photos and videos of the arrest. Former victims of Richard's abuse came forward with their stories. Financial crimes investigators revealed the scope of the money laundering operation. 6 months later, I sat in my living room reading the sentencing report. Richard had accepted a plea bargain, 18 years in federal prison for money laundering, conspiracy, and professional misconduct. His criminal network had been dismantled, with dozens of associates facing charges. Melissa had cooperated with investigators, providing evidence about Richard's manipulation tactics in exchange for immunity from prosecution. She'd lost everything, her marriage, her social standing, her financial security, but avoided criminal charges for unknowingly participating in Richard's schemes. The divorce settlement was renegotiated completely. Instead of paying Melissa spousal support, I'd received compensation for her role in the financial fraud that had damaged my reputation and career. The house remained mine along with our investments and my pension. But the most satisfying outcome was personal. The investigation had revealed me as a dedicated detective who'd uncovered a major criminal conspiracy while dealing with personal betrayal. My reputation in the department was stronger than ever, and I'd been promoted to head the financial crimes unit. I'd also met someone new. Dr. Sarah Kim, a forensic psychologist who'd consulted on Richard's case, appreciated both my professional competence and my personal integrity. Our relationship was built on mutual respect rather than deception, something I'd never experienced with Melissa. A year after the wedding day arrests, I received an unexpected letter from Melissa. She was living in Portland, working as a receptionist, and attending support groups for victims of professional abuse. "Jeff, I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what Richard did to me and what I did to you. I was manipulated, but that doesn't excuse the pain I caused. You saved me from something far worse than divorce. I hope you're happy." I read the letter once, then filed it away. Some apologies come too late, from people who've revealed their character too clearly to be trusted again. 2 years later, Sarah and I were married in a small ceremony surrounded by colleagues, friends, and family members who understood the value of loyalty and integrity. No drama, no deception, no hidden agendas, just two people who'd found each other after learning hard lessons about character and commitment. The wedding was perfect in its simplicity, the opposite of the elaborate charade I'd destroyed at the Fairmont Olympic. As Sarah and I exchanged vows, I reflected on how betrayal had ultimately led to something better than anything I'd lost. Richard Thornfield was serving his sentence in federal prison, his criminal empire dismantled and his reputation destroyed. Melissa was rebuilding her life with the knowledge that her dream wedding had been the beginning of a nightmare she'd never suspected. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation. It's simply allowing criminals to face the consequences of their choices while you build something better from the ashes of their betrayal. The detective who'd been fooled by his own wife had become the investigator who'd exposed a major criminal conspiracy. The marriage that ended in deception had been replaced by a relationship built on truth and mutual respect. What do you think about Jeff's approach to handling wedding day justice? Was his strategic patience and professional investigation justified, or should he have confronted the affair differently? Have you ever faced a situation where someone's betrayal actually protected you from something worse? If you enjoyed this story of detective work and wedding day justice triumphing over criminal behavior and manipulation, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Revenge Galore for more tales where professional competence and strategic planning triumph over deception and fraud. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story where the good guys win through intelligence, patience, and superior investigation skills. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is letting criminals destroy themselves while you build the evidence to ensure justice is served.